Well, hello, everybody. Dr. Ron Oberstein, president of Life West. Welcome to another edition of Life by Life West. Of course, by my side, I have my rock, my pillar, my better half, Dr. Mary Oberstein. Welcome, Dr. Mary.
Hi.
So great to see you virtually.
You too.
And with us today, we have a very special guest. We have Dr. Lona Cook. And Lona, welcome to the Life by Life West webinar or podcast, whatever you want to call it.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to have this conversation with both of you.
We are too. I just want to give our audience a little bit of background about Dr. Lona. She's a 2009 graduate from Northwestern University of Health Sciences. Right away, she graduated in November, and just in January of 2010, 2 months later, she opened her practice in Chippewa Falls, Wisconsin, and western side of Wisconsin. And she's got a very, very successful practice, which I'm sure we'll get into talking about. But in addition to her practice, she is a family person. She's got 5 kids. She's got 3 stepdaughters, ages 16, 13, and 12. And she's got 2 sons, biological sons, with her current husband, who are 6 years old and 1 year old. So you've got a household of people at times. It's just amazing. She's past president of the Chiropractic Society of Wisconsin, has been involved in politics since her 3rd year in practice. And between family, between politics, between having a successful practice, she managed to squeeze in just a little bit of time to write 2 very successful books. Her first book called Just Tell Me Where to Start. It's about how to start in practice and reduce your student loans and do all kinds of really great stuff. And a newly released book, her second book, called Reclamation, the Evolution of a Hot Mess, which Mary will attest to. I should probably read that tomorrow, which I probably will, Lona. But you've done so much, and we want to welcome you. So thank you for being with us today.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely.
Wow. You make it sound good when you say it all like that. Thank you.
You definitely don't sound like a hot mess. You sound like a successful woman who's juggling.
Well, you feel like a hot mess some of the time, and
that's true.
Chiropractic has certainly helped me become much less of a hot mess. So that's a great thing.
But isn't it true that when everyone's a hot mess, like it's
yeah,
like,
of course.
If you go through life thinking that you're not, and yet everybody knows they are, right? And it's like to be able to declare that really just allows a lot of freedom in your life, right?
Absolutely.
I'm declaring it right now. I am a hot mess, and
right?
And it's like,
me too.
It's great.
Yeah, me too. I had a hot mess day yesterday. But I think that's where this thing that chiropractic, where it's taught us so much about what life is really about and how it works. It's like when you know that things that would have been really a hot mess otherwise, it's like you can offer yourself so much more grace and learning, and I don't know, just so much. So part of why I wrote it is to help teach people how to look at their life from this inside out way of life. Mm-hmm.
Well needed.
Well, one thing that Ron said when he introduced you was about your involvement in the state organization. So let's start there. What led you to get involved, and maybe share with the audience some wins, some victories that you had?
Yeah, I would love to. So the Chiropractic Society of Wisconsin, we formed almost 10 years ago now, because there was many needs in our state. So we do have 2 organizations here, which I know is sometimes a controversial thing, to have more than one organization. But at the time, and still to this day, there's a need for it. Our organization, the CSW, is the vitalistic organization in Wisconsin. And when we formed, there was just some things happening and had been happening in our state where there was a lot of ruffled feathers and need for different representation. And one of the things that was going on was that there was a state exam that was keeping a lot of chiropractors from getting licensed. So you went off to chiropractic school, maybe to Life West, and you graduate, and now you can't come back to Wisconsin because your board score had to be 100 points higher than any other state. And so
board scores were measured not just by passing your national boards, there was an actual threshold
Yes.
Wisconsin set that was
Yes.
different than national boards?
Correct.
Wow.
Yes. And we had a state exam, which virtually no one was passing. So there was a year and a half, 2 years where we had like no one getting licensed into the state of Wisconsin. So that was a win we had pretty early on, was that we were able to get both of those removed. And so chiropractic is open again in Wisconsin for new grads. So that was a big win. We also had another association try and introduce drugs into our scope. And so we were very grateful that we had already been formed for a while at that point and had the ability to go down and lobby against that, because obviously we did not want that under our scope here. And so we won that as well.
Wow, that's great.
Yeah. And most recently, and I will say that this is one of the things I'm so proud about, is I know a lot of states took a lot of heat in this last 18 months for not having good support for their chiropractors to stay open and continue to see their patients through the pandemic. And that was something that was so awesome here, is that right away when everyone was being, told like masking and sanitation and close your doors, we were, our association was like, keep those doors open. Here's what you got to do. We want you seeing your people, and just had a great backbone for us to say, like, it's not me just being the rogue chiropractor, it's our whole state. This is, who's standing up for us. And we've been able to also put on some good events for informed consent on vaccination. And man, I just feel like our leadership has really shown why it's been great that we put the energy into our state association and are represented down in the Capitol. And so I do urge other people who maybe don't feel like they're represented in their state, you can always create a new one if you get well networked with each other, and you can do it,
Yeah. It's interesting when you talk about that, because I mean, you stepped in 3 years into practice, right? And got involved, and and then you obviously at 8 years in practice, you became the president, right? And I mean, those are major victories, and I just want to congratulate you. I remember when Wisconsin was going through the drugs issue that was going on there. I know the ICA, I'm on the board, or was on the board. And at the time, I'm not sure if I was vice president at the time, but we supported, the Wisconsin, we gave, and there was so much that was going on, but your association worked so diligently, and it was amazing how you guys just came together and worked. And it shows what people can do if they're passionate about something, right?
Right. We've got an amazing team. I think, whenever people get squeezed, you kind of like figure out who's, like right now we're all going through this, and what's happened the last 18 months, you find out who can I lean into, who can I count on, who's going to have my back. And we have an amazing board that just is a lot of people who are always looking for solutions, like, okay, we could just put this, over to the side and say, I don't have time for it right now. But everybody also realizes, like, this affects our future in chiropractic. This affects our ability to practice. This affects our kids and what the world's like down the road. So I love working with all these people on the board, because they're all just people who want the best for their communities and the profession at large, which is awesome.
So Lona, let's do this. Let's shift a little bit, because, but I want to stay on the topic of leadership, because obviously leadership is so vital in politics and in state associations and all that stuff. But let's shift this more into practice and just more into life, because there's so much that we all can learn about leadership. When I say leadership, I'm talking about anything from, how do we take care of ourselves? How do we lead our families? What do we do in our practices? And really more about, like, in what direction do we go, like, inside out lifestyles, things like that. If you could just, let's touch on some of those as far as what you feel is important and what resonates with you.
Yeah. Leadership is, something I, like you, feel like we're going to always be learning how to lead better or lead differently, because there's not just one way to lead. I will say that leadership in the last 18 months through this whole pandemic has taken on a whole nother framework to me, where I realize that many of us as chiropractors and vitalistic chiropractors probably feel the urge to lead more than we ever have, as you witnessed so much of this fear mongering that's gone on, and people really looking for someone to almost latch on to. And so at various events that I've been at or spoken at, one of the things I talk about is if you're like a tree and you're planting that root, you can sway with what's happening, but you're rooted, so you're stronger, versus if you're not rooted, you're, or you're brittle, you're going to break in these winds right now. So one thing I've realized is like those of us with the strongest root in vitalism right now are offering kind of a shelter for so many people to latch in and say, okay, I can get stronger. I can plant my root here with you. And then we become a root system together, which again strengthens all of us. And so leadership for me this past 18 months has been like, okay, I got to take care of myself first so that I can be a good root system for those in my practice and those that I play with professionally here in Wisconsin. And, some days like yesterday, I had a rough day and it was like, that wasn't probably my day to step into leadership, but someone else can do it that day. That's why we have each other. So I certainly think that's just part of good self-care right now, is that not only am I going to lead the people who lean on me, but I need to find the leaders that I can network with so that I get juice just from listening to them or feeling like I'm not in this fight alone. Maybe it doesn't have to be a fight. Maybe it's just we're planted right now. We're holding kind of some framework for humanity right now as vitalistic chiropractors. As winds of change are happening, we're rooted. We're letting things kind of fall into place. We're seeing structures kind of chaotically fall apart, but we're rooted in vitalism, which feels to me in the last 18 months like we're some of the most sturdy people to be around. I just want to be around chiropractors right now. I don't know about you, but it's like I wish I could just stay in my bubble 24/7.
I'll tell you what's true, and I mean, everyone that Mary and I speak with, their practices just exploded last year, had record years, and it wasn't because they were the only ones open. It was because what they were offering and what people wanted, right? And like you said, they wanted that shelter and they wanted that place, that oasis that they can come into, that they knew that they were accepted. They knew that someone was there to take care of them. They knew that someone was there to actually work with them and, create the possible, the healthiest possible framework for them within their own bodies. And, just incredible things.
And not create more fear. People were latching onto that. I noticed, like, if they reached out and the first thing out of your mouth wasn't something that created fear in their body, they got to sit back a little bit. And I think a lot of chiropractors really delivered a lot of hope to people. It was like, okay, stop, take a deep breath. You're going to be okay. And then start the conversation. Yes. So, and I'm curious, where did you find that support?
For me,
for you,
first of all, in my team, I think it really showed who's on your team in the last year too, like where are they coming from? Who can you count on? Who's carrying this message and maybe who's not? And I know there was a lot of chiropractors early on in the pandemic that I think did go through changing of the guard in their office sometimes. And that's okay sometimes too. And then my state association, those locally, I mean, that again, I felt was so critical in this last year, because state by state, there was different things happening. So knowing who you could count on to say, hey, what are you doing? And what do you think I need to be doing? And just making sure that you're not in it alone. I think that was one of the biggest threads I felt, is that we needed to know that we had community. And then, our schools that carry vitalism, you guys are like so important, more than ever right now, because again, I just see this being something that one of my good friends, Devin Verana, said this to me. She's like, we've been calling out for change in so many of these avenues. What did we think it was going to feel like when change was upon us? Did we think it was going to be this like kumbaya event that created it? Probably not. So that made me more hopeful when I think like that, where it's like, yeah, I mean, we've wanted some of these structures to change and I think we're witnessing it, but it feels crazy.
Yeah. And throughout history, I think if we look back, it usually isn't a kumbaya, people sitting around the campfire holding hands for change.
Yeah.
And I don't want to say that's fortunate, because, we saw change happen, in the 60s at Kent State, 70s at Kent State, and it sometimes it just takes, it builds and builds and builds, and then something that the dam has to break, right? And the truth is that the people who step up at that time are going to be the people who are going to make that change happen. Martin Luther King didn't just sit around one day and say, hey, I think we should do this. And they just, had a meeting. I mean, they had to go through a lot to get to where the civil rights movement actually changed the United States. And I think in healthcare right now, in chiropractic, that's happening big time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm sure you guys see this. I feel like it's happening frequently to me where people within, I'll say, mainstream healthcare are reaching out because they know they probably can ask some questions or, say, hey, I don't agree with what's happening right now. I'm scared, or I don't know who to talk to, or I know there's more of us here, but this is what my hospital system's pushing on us. And it's like, yeah, I mean, it's like collectively everybody's in this chaos and maybe at different points in it. But again, why I think most people are kind of stepping off the train. And so here we are as chiropractors, like, hey, welcome to the party. Like, if you've known some of this stuff for a long time, we'd love to help you connect back into innate healing and knowing your body's capable. And actually, do you know that there's a lot of things that maybe you haven't ever heard before that I'm going to say to you that you might actually feel as truth in your system? Because I do think that's how it's starting to work, is that people are waking up to like, this doesn't feel right. Like some of this is just not okay. And I don't even know why it's not, because this has been what I've been used to. And then I just had this experience this morning. This woman who is a patient here, she just had cancer, and you could tell she was starting to question some of what she has done for her cancer treatment, which is not, in my scope of practice, but it's interesting. I just said, you should listen to what, internally you're feeling and don't discredit that. And she had asked about getting vaccinated for COVID. And she's like, what do you think? And I told her my thoughts. And then she said, I felt like something was wrong when I asked them, should I be getting this? And they said, we tell everyone they should get it. And she goes, well, I'm not everyone, and I thought that is another thing that patients are looking for, is they're not feeling like someone's actually looking at them. Who are they as a unique person? What is their whole system about? So yeah, I think it's our time.
And I love how that's leadership from empowerment. Like, because you didn't make her wrong. You didn't make the doctor wrong. You didn't say like, see, that's the problem. It was like you empowered her. Like, how did that feel? How did that make you feel? Like, get inside your body, and you're in charge of your body. You know your body well.
Yep.
So that's beautiful.
And it's interesting too. It's a hot mess outside. I mean, it is, and it's nobody's fault, but it's just a hot mess. People are getting, are getting vaccinated, and that's their choice, and that's a wonderful thing if that's what they feel is right for them, right? Now, a lot of people aren't necessarily taking that route, but even so, and yet the vaccine, it's so confusing because obviously it says you can still get COVID, or you could still get the variant, and you could still transmit, and all these things, and it just that's the hot mess. It's that there's nothing concrete that's out there, which creates so much confusion in people and the layperson. Doctors, we can feather this out and make sense of it, right? But in the layperson, and you can go and hear the party line, which is what your patient heard, right? We tell everybody, but I'm not everybody. I'm immune compromised. I just went through cancer. I'm this, I'm that. And it's like people want to know about them individually. And, we as chiropractors are able to at least share with them what's within them, right? Which no one's talking about.
Well, my friend Wade Adnanson said this at one point in the last year. He's like, the doctor of the future is the patient. And I think, gosh, if that's what we could as chiropractors kind of unify around and teach them, like, yeah, I don't know what's best for your system. I know some things that are probably some good tips for you and some good things that I'm picking up off your system, but you are your best doctor. And listening to that internal voice is going to be wildly life-changing for you if you've never done that before. And that's that going within before you look without, Yeah. And then the chaos doesn't feel quite as chaotic because you're more grounded or centered.
Yeah. And we're giving people that anchor, we're giving people these choices and opportunities to rethink and reframe, I didn't tell you this, Mary, yesterday I was, I'm putting my PowerPoint together for the Wave. The Wave is next week. And a piece of mine is going to be around Herbert Ross Reaver. And I was watching that, Mary and I and a friend, Dr. Mark Kimes, brought Herbert Ross Reaver to California, going back into the early 90s, maybe.
Yeah.
Some of that, and someone asked him, like, how'd you start a practice? Like, what did you tell people back in the in the 20s? Like, what were you doing? And he said this. He said, when I got out of school, I was so excited to tell the world about innate intelligence. It wasn't about, hey, I can help you with this, I can help you with that, I can do this. It centered around the core, and that was innate intelligence, which goes back to what it was, either Wayne or Wade, that you said that the doctor of the future is the patient. Actually, the doctor of the past is the patient too, right? And it's always been there. But to tell the world about innate, and be able to share that within you, there's a healing capacity. And who are we as chiropractors, or as osteopaths, or as medical doctors, or as anybody, naturopaths? Who are we to say that somebody can't heal? How do we put that label on somebody? Fred Barge from Wisconsin, go Wisco, said, he always said the word, the one thing to never take away from a patient is hope. That's powerful.
Yeah, I know.
Well, going back to the hot mess, because I do want to get your book and I do want to read it.
Sounds great. I'll send you a copy.
Oh, perfect.
And then you'll tell me exactly why I'm a hot mess, right?
Yeah, maybe you should read it first.
I think I will.
We'll read it together.
We'll read it together.
I think that's a better idea. Can you tell us the journey of writing 2 books and what led you to do that? And
Sure. So my background in undergrad was actually in creative writing. I knew I was going to be a chiropractor, but I don't know why, but that's what I did. And so going through chiropractic school, when I got out, one of the things I don't know why, it just kind of sat on me, we'll call it innate, was that I wanted a firsthand account of someone opening their doors from scratch and paying off student loans, and how did they do that? So at the time, I wasn't using Google Calendar. I don't even know if it was a thing. Maybe it was. I just had my notebook where I had my daily, what I had to do to get this practice off the ground. So after 2 years, I went back and just looked at my day-to-day notes and started to kind of put that together. Okay, 3 months from opening, I was doing this. And then first month of opening, here's some of the things I was doing. So I pieced together my story. And then I got good feedback from people that read it and said, oh, this is a quick read. And it gave me lots of ideas, or it gave me the courage to open my own. And so now fast forward, I think I had lost my mind, but in my mind, I thought that when I had my baby Max, who's now a year, that once I had him, I would have time to write, which is delusional. I don't know what I was thinking, that I would have time to write with a baby. But because of COVID, I ended up having more staff here than I normally would have, because we operate in our school district as well. And obviously the schools had closed down. So wanting to keep everyone employed, I backed my schedule also off, and I was pregnant. And so I thought, I'm going to write now. And what was sitting on me, again, probably innate, was that I was going to share my story of awakening, which coincided a lot with when I opened the practice and what I was learning then through various mentors and all of that, through this kind of crash course of life, of learning that life is not happening to me. I was a really good victim in certain ways, and I didn't even realize it before, to no, I'm creating all of this. My energy is creating what I'm experiencing in my life. I just didn't know that before. And I was actively participating in creating drama in my life. And don't get me wrong, I still have those moments, but I'm aware of it so much on a deeper level now, whether we're talking about how I'm actively creating my health, or actively creating my finances, or actively creating the opportunities my family has together. I just think that pivotal shift of knowing that life is actually happening through you, you're an energetic channel, is like a night and day light switch in your life to know that. And that is one of the things that I geek out the most on in chiropractic. And that to me is innate, because innate is your tether coming through you, and your life is this channel of energy, both internally, what we experience in our physical body as sensation, that's our body speaking to us, but our life is is that too. And so that's what I wanted to demonstrate through using my own school of hard knocks and
Right.
putting some of those vulnerability things on paper, but it's good. So.
Well, what I love about that is that when I speak to the students here at Like West and say, what do you like? We can bring in people, we have contacts. What do you want to hear? And you know what they say to me is they go, well, we don't want to just hear the success stories. We don't want to just hear people who came in, they are seeing all these people and everything's been great. We want to hear the struggles and how they overcame them. And that sounds like your book is like the Bible for that.
Yeah, I'm trying to put myself out there. I like when it came to like actually launching this, I was like, oh my God, am I doing this? Like, but I've gotten great feedback and people tell me their struggles then, and that made it so much more like human to human. And I love that. I do think that's again, part of what we're stepping into. I think people want authentic connection. And then they show themselves, and that's healing for all of us. So
it's vulnerability, right? It's like, if you're vulnerable, you create a space for people to be vulnerable, and there's healing in that. And I love the saying, like in a tribe or your family or in a group, when one person heals, everyone heals.
Yeah.
And so like, I'm really excited to read your book. It sounds very healing.
Thank you. I hope you like it.
Yeah. I'll let you know.
Can I jump? I want to ask you a question, and you just talked about vulnerability. We're gonna have to wrap up pretty soon, but can you share what the hot mess was yesterday?
Oh yeah. So, okay. So I am off this week. I scheduled myself off, and so I have my 6-year-old and my 12-month-old, and so I was feeling like, okay, I was off, but I still have all these irons in the fire and I'm at home. And we have a kitchen remodel going on with 2 little kids. So I haven't had a working kitchen in 2 months also. So I'm home, and I scheduled Wednesday to actually go meet one of my college roommates about an hour away. And we were going to have a girls' day, and it wasn't kids and it wasn't business. And I was like real excited about this. Well, without saying too much about the other person, like, and what happened, there was some irony in the whole thing, but my childcare fell through. And so I had to cancel on my friend. And it was like, normally I can just say like, okay, I guess I wasn't meant to go and just move on. And for some reason it was like, boom, I just like bottomed out, where I was like, I've been nursing for a year straight, like no sleep. I'm still working. Now I have kids and I'm still working. And I just realized like I've done a shit job of trying to take care of myself in the last short period of time. And I think COVID's added a whole nother layer of that, where it's just like we talked about, there's all this chaos happening. And if you're the root for a lot of people at times, it's really easy to get neglected. And I felt that yesterday. And so the funny part is, because I know that life is happening through me, it was like my 6-year-old spilled his milk on the couch. Then I'm sitting in the bathtub with my baby, and he poops in the bathtub, which he never does. And I'm in it with him. And I literally was just like laughing, because I'm like, okay, like there's shit in my bathtub right now. Like
literally
day right now. Yeah. Like I was in it. And so my husband got home, and of course my go-to is always like project what I don't like onto my husband, and it's his fault. And he was just like, you need to take a minute. I'm taking the kids. I'm going like, and he is like, come join in an hour if you feel like it. And then I like did the things I needed to do. And all of a sudden it was like, it was fine. But I couldn't, normally I can rubber band myself back, and it wasn't happening yesterday.
That's so cool. Well, thank you for sharing that. It sounds like your kids were the perfect metaphor to be able to share with you, hey,
you can't make that up.
This is what today is. Exactly. It sounds like a movie.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Wow.
The universe is pleasure. Really, and Dr. Murray?
I was saying that the universe was really giving you a really loud and clear message. So,
Well, and I said, like poop in the bathtub is funny, but sometimes when you stay in those states for a long time, what happens next is not funny. It's like, you're in control of that. And so I was like, God, I got to get myself out of this, because I see right now this is semi-humorous, even though I don't feel humorous. Yeah. It's like, I don't want to live here. And like, that's what happens when you stay in those states.
Yeah.
I love it.
Great.
I love it. Thank you for being vulnerable and sharing that. That's beautiful.
Okay. Well, so we'll wrap. Before we wrap up, we have 2 questions to ask you. Okay. the first question, what advice would you give yourself if you could go back and talk to Lona in that first trimester at Northwestern?
I would tell her, like, you definitely do not have it figured out. So you might as well just like humble yourself right now and open your ears.
Seriously?
Oh yeah.
That's great.
Really? When you got
advice.
into school, you were like, I got it all together. I know it.
No, I definitely was like closed though. I think like maybe people outwardly wouldn't have known all of that about me, but I just had so much baggage from like, I was like heavily coming out of my college experience in Madison, where I was like a bartender, drinking way too much, all of these things, party girl. And so I just needed to like realize that like my life was in for a radical change. And so I think just telling me like, it's going to be okay. And you definitely do not have it all figured out right now.
Yeah.
So that would have probably been like a gentle nudge to just like chill out and let it happen to you, you know?
Yeah. It seems like there's a theme that most bartenders haven't figured out or think they do. You know what I'm saying?
And you just like spent so many years watching people who are in a generally not conscious state. It's like you got this like major chip on your shoulder because that's what you've witnessed for a long time. And that I needed some time to just like recalibrate after all that.
Absolutely. I love it. Hey, second question. All right. So now we fast forward and we're going to go back, 10, 11 years. And I want you to see Dr. Lona just starting practice, in January, and knowing what you know now. What would you say to her? What would you say to yourself back then?
That was really when I started to wake up. So I think a lot of it would have just been like, enjoy the ride, and keep doing what you're doing, because I think at that point I had this kind of like humbling that happened, and I was starting to go different places, learn new things, really be active in creating my life. And what I guess I realize now in hindsight is like what you think at that moment is what's going to come next, is like, it's generally going to be even bigger and better than what you can dream at that point. Yeah. So just like enjoy the process. And so I try and do that now, even though, we all take ourselves way too seriously and like what needs to happen today or in 3 months or whatever. So I try, and kids are great for that, right? Like, just snuggling your babies is about as good as it gets. And so trying to just be as present to that as possible, which is tough when you have crap in the bathtub and you're not being present. So like, just don't take it seriously.
But the truth is, poop in the bathtub can really, it stops you from taking life so seriously, right? Taking yourself so seriously. It's like, this is reality, and it's such a great metaphor for that.
Oh God. Yeah.
I love it. Well, awesome. Thank you so much. Dr. Lona, you are an inspiration. And I know that, I want to thank you for all the mentorships you've done for our students here and for Wisconsin and for your patients and everyone that you touch. You're just a beam of light, and you definitely have this love essence that comes out of you. And we really appreciate you. And I'm so thrilled to know that the future leaders in our profession, when Dr. Mary and I have moved on, to work, that you're part of this, and it's so refreshing. So thank you. And to our viewers, thank you for being with us. Pick up Dr. Lona's books, listen to this, share them with other people. It's just so important to be able to be authentic, and to also, be able to laugh at yourself and realize that life will give you everything you need at that exact time, whether it's the trophy or the poop in the bathtub, right? Whatever it might be. So thank you so much for tuning into another episode of Life by Life West. We will be dropping these every other week. The opposite weeks are our Life West leadership line. You're welcome to join on all of them. Share them with your friends, share them with your loved ones. Most of all, keep nourishing yourself, keep loving those people around you. And remember that, the power is within you, and that, be excited to tell the world about innate intelligence. So until our next episode, for myself, for my partner in health and life and my world, Dr. Mary, and for Dr. Lona, We wish you all the health in the world, and we'll be back at you again in another couple of weeks. Bye-bye.